This is week 186 of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine. I'm Belokur, reporting to you from Kyiv, and I'll be taking you through the top stories from Ukraine this week. This week saw continued fallout of last week's engagement of Russian drones by NATO air defense on Polish territory. The incident, which Poland immediately claimed was intentional, was met with political alarm in Warsaw and a somewhat muted response from NATO. The alliance did, however, announce the Eastern Sentry Initiative this week, a coordinated effort between multiple NATO member states to ramp up its defensive capabilities along its eastern flank. Many analysts say that the lackluster response may encourage Moscow to launch further probing incursions into NATO territory, if they believe they can do so without triggering full collective retaliation. And one could argue that further probes have already been launched. Last weekend, Romania's defense minister said that radar systems picked up a Russian drone as it crossed about 6 miles into Romanian territory and lingered there for close to an hour, although Romania didn't shoot it down. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov declared on Monday that NATO is at war with Russia, arguing that the alliance's support for Ukraine amounted to direct participation in a war against Moscow. This framing was echoed in a broader disinformation campaign aimed in part at Polish audiences. Narratives circulated blaming Ukraine for the incursion, minimizing Russian culpability, or suggesting that Poland was being manipulated into escalation. Polish authorities and watchdogs quickly identified coordinated disinformation activity, especially stemming from Russian and Belarusian sources, that sought to shift responsibility away from Russia. Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump raised doubts about whether the incursion into Poland was deliberate, calling it possibly a mistake, and notably saying that he wasn't going to defend anybody in certain statements.
Saw these drones in Poland.
Yeah, well,
more sanctions.
I'm not going to defend anybody, but the Poland's, they were actually knocked down and they fell into an area. But he shouldn't be close to Poland anyway.
Right.
Which raised concern among other NATO members regarding the U.S.'s resolve in enforcing collective defense. For the Baltics, which are smaller states with more exposed territories and often more limited air defense infrastructure, these diagnostic test runs carry dire warnings about how a response could be coordinated in the event of an attack. Each such event adds pressure on NATO to clarify its doctrines. What constitutes a threat sufficient to warrant engagement? When does provocation cross the line into aggression? And how many minor attacks does Russia get to launch in preparation for larger ones? The Kyiv Independent is a reader-funded news outlet, meaning that shows like this are only made possible by viewers like you. If you'd like to join our community of more than 20,000 members, there'll be a link to our membership page in the description below. I'd also like to thank everyone who donates directly via YouTube. Your support is greatly appreciated. After a summer of intense fighting, Ukraine is bracing for another Russian offensive campaign this autumn. In an interview with Sky News, President Volodymyr Zelensky said this week that Russia is preparing 2 more heavy offensives before winter, although he didn't give details on where these new assaults are expected. Zelensky also noted that Russia's 3 offensive campaigns over the summer had failed, that Russian forces are doing worse than they expected, and that Russian President Vladimir Putin allegedly doesn't know about it. It's not hard to believe that the Russian command may be misreporting its achievements on the battlefield. In fact, this Wednesday, Russian military chief Valery Gerasimov claimed that Moscow's troops are advancing on all fronts, including in the east and south, which is not true. Russia's summer campaign indeed wasn't a big success for Moscow. They didn't capture any major Ukrainian cities or make a breakthrough anywhere across the front line. But bit by bit, Russian forces made significant progress, capturing more than 1,500 square kilometers of land over 3 months, or almost 3 times more territory than it occupied over the summer last year. Although these gains came at a high cost, with Ukraine estimating that Russia lost nearly 95,000 troops this summer, at this point, we know well that for Moscow, the prize is worth the price. Most of these gains were made in Ukraine's east, as Moscow continues to pursue its goal of capturing the entirety of Ukraine's Donbas region, comprising of Donetsk and Luhansk oblasts. This has been Russia's main goal for over 3 years, ever since its failure to capture Kyiv in the early days of the full-scale invasion. During the Alaska summit last month, Putin reportedly offered up a deal under which Ukraine would surrender the remainder of Donbas in exchange for a written guarantee from Russia that it would not engage in further invasion, a proposition that Ukraine rejects outright for obvious reasons. The week prior to this, Zelensky said Putin had told high-ranking U.S. officials that he intended to seize all of the Donbas region by the end of this year. Over the past weeks, Russia has also made a new push in Kharkiv Oblast, entering areas that were already once occupied and then liberated. As we enter autumn, over half a year after Trump resumed office in the U.S. and launched his so-called peace process, and after a summer of brutal air raids that terrorized and exhausted the country, public opinion inside Ukraine shows the strain of fighting for a just peace while combating wartime fatigue. A poll by the Kyiv International Institute of Sociology conducted this month found that 74% of Ukrainians would accept a peace deal that froze the front line as it currently stands, provided it included Western security guarantees. Simultaneously, 75% of respondents said that Russia's stated peace terms, which include full withdrawal from Donetsk Oblast, lifting sanctions, granting official status to the Russian language, limiting the Ukrainian military, and recognizing Russian rule over Crimea and Donbas, were completely unacceptable. If you're looking to understand Ukraine beyond the headlines, we're in the middle of our second season of Dare to Ukraine, our wartime travel show. This time around, my colleague Masha spent a whole month in a Ukrainian village, diving into daily chores, exploring local traditions and crafts, and dealing with all of the chaos, charm, and curveballs of village life. It's raw, real, and occasionally ridiculous, and it's a side of Ukraine you usually don't get to see amidst the terrors of war. Dare to Ukraine can be found here on our YouTube channel, with new episodes every Saturday. Multiple members of the British royal family have made gestures of support for Ukraine this week, affirming the long-standing solidarity that the monarchy has shown with the cause. Last weekend, Prince Harry made an unannounced visit to Kyiv, his second visit to Ukraine this year. Over the course of the weekend, he inspected damage from Russian bombardments, visited Independence Square, and met with both veterans and government officials, including Prime Minister Yulia Sviridenko and the Veterans Affairs Minister Natalia Kalmykova. Prince Harry served for a decade in the British military and is a longtime advocate for veterans' welfare, and his Invictus Games for wounded veterans have featured more and more Ukrainian athletes every year, meaning that his work in Ukraine is considered a central part of his public platform, and he's widely recognized here. To follow it up, on Wednesday evening, King Charles supported Ukraine in his speech during U.S. President Donald Trump's second state visit to the United Kingdom. He invoked the specter of tyranny, saying, "Today, as tyranny once again threatens Europe, we and our allies stand together in support of Ukraine to deter aggression and secure peace." Trump could be seen nodding along to the king's speech, but didn't comment after. As monarch, King Charles remains politically neutral in domestic terms, but he's allowed to make symbolic remarks about foreign policy. And by framing support for Ukraine as a moral and strategic necessity, he's aligning the monarchy with the broader UK foreign policy consensus, and probably hoping that the US is equally compelled to present a united front against Russia.
So this week's member question is a really interesting one from the Big Uke. They're asking about the Commander-in-Chief Syrsky's decision to fire 2 Army Corps commanders, the 17th Army Corps in Zaporizhia region and the 20th Army Corps, which is fighting in the border area between Donetsk and Dnipropetrovsk oblasts. The decision of Syrsky to fire 2 of them at once The reason given for that was for poor results. And the big uke is asking, is this a bad case of Syrskyi firings about him ordering brigades never to take a step back? Or is this a good move because they were inept? These are two pretty nameless, higher military commanders. We don't know the inside story on this as of yet, but unfortunately we can make an educated guess, which is that this is indeed happening because of the Ukrainian higher command's insistence on kind of micromanaging brigades and battalions and telling them, ordering them never to take a step back, never to lose positions. And that creates problems on the battlefield when units could be defending a better place, maybe a bit further back, but they're ordered to stay in positions, sometimes almost surrounded, in which case they take extra losses, and that compromises the defense of the whole area, and that's just not what we want. So that's what it unfortunately looks like. It's a difficult part of the front line, and one that is really difficult to defend. But still, if we go according to the patterns of what we know about how the Ukrainian military command runs, it doesn't look like good news.
That's all for this week. We'll be back next Sunday with more news from Ukraine. If you enjoyed this video, as much as anyone can enjoy this kind of news, please consider becoming a member of the Kyiv Independent community. It's thanks to viewers like you that we can do this work, and we're so grateful for your support. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next week.